is the shit you know about. This is your stuff, so you'll smash it today.
We'll smash it. Hey, everyone! Elliot and Michael from Alice Pluko here today for another live stream today. We don't know if Tom Larrage is going to be joining us. We've sent a few links out to people that might be joining us today. We're basically going to be talking about Save the Children, human trafficking, vaccines, and everything in between. And also, if you've got any questions in the audience, please put them down in the comments section. So basically, what I was talking before with Michael before is about the Alex Jones. If you don't know who he is labeled a conspiracy theorist, and you take everything he says with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, who knows what he's saying is the truth. But he did a crazy documentary about 16 years ago in 2004, and it was about Endgame, and it's about how there's a new world order at play. This is tinfoil hats on right now, so don't take anything factually, people, if you're watching this. This is just a documentary that talks about New World Order and how he's following this group of billionaires called the Bilderberg Group. And it consists of like Rupert Murdoch, Bill Gates, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, politicians, UN, everyone, you name it, right? And they go to this conference every year to discuss world problems. And yeah, so he talks about that, and it just makes you think a little bit. Maybe the things we're seeing today is something that they've been discussing. But tinfoil hat off, that's probably not the case. What do you think, Michael? Do you think there's something to it?
About the which ones, which stuff, because there's a lot of shit going on.
Well, what would you like to talk about first? Human trafficking.
Can you repeat what you said before?
I'm just talking about. I was watching a documentary called Endgame by Alex Jones that discusses the New World Order's plans and how.
Okay, right,
the Bilderberg Group and they do all that stuff.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. There's a good quote from this comedian who passed away. He was a bit political. He did this really good quote. He said, "There's a big club and you're not in it."
Yeah,
big club and you're not in it. So there's a lot of shit going on behind closed doors amongst very powerful and rich people that we don't know about. For example, stuff about in Hollywood with Harvey Weinstein, which the public knew nothing about until recently, but the people inside Hollywood knew for a very long time. And stuff with Jeffrey Epstein and his sex island that we didn't know about, but recently
it's all coming to light now. It's all coming to light now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg, right? So I wouldn't go as far as perhaps saying it's a new world order, but I think the sentiment is correct in that there's a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors that we don't know about. Okay, and the stuff we do know about is like 1% of a much larger picture.
Like you said,
most likely it'll never come out. But so the sentiment is there. I haven't seen any evidence of a new world order. Well, the problem is because a lot of the shady stuff they do is so secret, there may never be any evidence that may be disclosed.
There will never be, which is the scary thing, because why should people in this day and age have the right to be in secrecy, especially politicians, and especially that. Did you see the Democratic convention that they had the audacity to bring Bill Clinton on to say that Donald Trump needs to do his job as the president, when a couple of days before there were photos of him massaging someone's neck on a humanitarian, on the Loiter Express, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't really make sense for the Democrats, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
so
what do you reckon about that?
I just want to just backtrack a bit. So back to the world order. Yeah. So this whole thing about New World Order, Alex Jones, he talks about the lizard and the interdimensional wars and everything like this. That's just noise, right? Just forget about that. But there are certain interests that economic elites, people at the top in the corporate world, and politicians have, which are not in the common interest of ordinary people like you and I, or the people watching. And that is not necessarily about ruling about a new world order, but rather certain economic policies, for example, where they want to maximize profit, almost blur the economic borders of countries, as we've seen, because of globalization. The borders have kind of blurred, not the geographical political borders, but like the economic borders, the ease of the flow of resources. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but because it's actually aided quite a lot of economic growth, especially for developing countries. What we've actually seen is that developing countries who are more globalized, their average growth has been 5% per year, compared to developing countries that are less globalized, which have actually contracted by an average of negative 1% per year. So the problem isn't necessarily that economic globalization is bad, but rather it's the way the economic globalization occurs, whereby, again, it's not like a new world order, but it's certain economic policies where they
line the pockets of the elites, the top 1%.
Yeah, that they want that to be the new kind of economic type of establishment, which has already come to fruition, which is actually how we got Trump, because you had a lot of these backdoor deals between corporations and American politicians, also Australian politicians, pretty much politicians in general, the ones who we perceive that they have the power.
Robots.
There's this perception that the politicians have, that the prime minister or the president is the most powerful in the world. But sometimes it's actually the CEOs or some of the corporations that are actually just as powerful, perhaps even more powerful. And so as a consequence of this kind of not new world order, I'd say, but this economic establishment, is that we are
people want Trump because he can't be bought. He's a billionaire himself.
They want a populist. They want someone who will fundamentally change things. That's why there's actually been a rise in populism in Europe as well, and that's why Bernie has become popular as well. But it's not in Australia. It's not as bad because we have quite a strong union movement, and so we've been able to have a strong social safety net. So people are less likely to fall into the cracks if they have their job outsourced, for example.
Thankfully, that's a good thing about Australia. I think people these days, we get too caught up in American news because it's everywhere we go. Every screen we see is American news, and we forget that we're not American. We actually have good systems in place that can protect the consumer and the worker from automation,
and even small and medium businesses from being preyed on by much larger corporations. The mum and dad businesses, they want to survive as well, make a living, support their family. So it's important to support them too.
Which is where I think with all this new world order stuff is that it kind of contradicts itself, because it only makes sense if you're in America on what's happening. It doesn't make sense if you put yourself in a different country.
Yeah. So the new world order thing, it's a bit over the top.
But you can, if
the
you
sentiment,
kind of like
the concern about certain corporations being too big and politicians being corrupt and not held accountable. That is true, right? Especially in America. So that's why in places like America, as you just said before, you might be more likely to believe in those type of conspiracies. But it's much worse over there. Whereas in Australia, we're more stable, more equal society. Politicians are more transparent. There's still problems. Yeah, there's still problems with transparency here in Australia. It's not as worse though.
Like other countries, like in Belarus at the moment, whatever his name, Alexander Lenshikov, the last true dictator in Europe, 80% of the vote. Because did you know the exit polls said that he lost by 80%, but when they counted it, apparently he won by 80%. And now we're seeing mass uprising. And funnily enough, the only two countries that really do stand by his presidency is China and Russia, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. Did you also hear about, was it the Russian opposition leader? He's in
He got
hospital?
poisoned.
Yeah. And they're not letting him, the hospital isn't letting him move to a better hospital with better facilities and equipment.
Oh, it does. Oh, the
So that's
thing with Russian politics, that we don't really understand what's going on in Russia, because it's quite like China. Unless you're there, you don't really know the full gist of it. And sometimes Western media does portray Russia in a very negative light, which can be justified and can't be justified.
And I'm not sure if people realize this, but in places like Russia, a lot of Russians actually like Putin. They like that strong kind of authoritative figure, because Russia's never really had a democracy, have they? They don't have
Not really.
they haven't had those institutions that has organically grown in other Western countries, where it took hundreds of years for institutions like the parliament and the independent court system to emerge, become independent from a king, and be held accountable, and be very have a lot of integrity. Whereas in Russia, I think because in Russia, it's different because Belarus is very close to Russia, but they seem to be having, and they were also part of the Soviet Union. Yeah, they seem to be they seem to be having some different problems where people kind of like the more authoritarian figure of Putin in Russia, whereas in Belarus they want that more freedom.
Yeah.
Even though they've both kind of even though they've both had their problems since the collapse of the USSR. So
it's a weird situation that the mindset of Russia. What is Russia on the world stage, do you reckon? They're not really as strong as they once were back in the day in USSR days, but they're not necessarily as weak as other countries. They're just kind of sitting back and chilling out. We don't really hear about them quite a lot. We hear a lot about China because that's closer to home, and rightly so. If any communists are watching this, you know what we're talking about.
Did you hear about there's it's speculated, but there's some US intelligence claiming that Russia is paying the Taliban to kill US soldiers. What do you think about that? There's some people reckon, because that's actually, even in the intelligence community, it's a bit speculated. And I think some people reckon it's ridiculous, because why does the Taliban need to be paid money to kill US soldiers? They do it for free all the time, right?
Yeah. And I think it's something used to be a smokescreen to something larger, which is trying to then denounce Trump because of his relationship with Russia.
Yeah,
because it always come back to Trump. No matter what, anything happens in the world, it will always come back to Trump, and it's kind of getting a bit annoying, isn't it? Because the whole Democratic convention, did you watch any of it? It's just dissing Trump the whole time. It's not actually talking about policy.
Yeah, it seems like unfortunately the Democratic Party, although there's a very progressive social democratic wing that actually that's pretty much led by Bernie and AOC, that want fundamental change to improve the lives of Americans. The leadership still is so preoccupied with Trump. It's almost become just like the party of anti-Trump. You know, it's like, and whatever Trump supports, we're against it, right?
And the weird thing about with the U.S. Postal Service, because at the moment they're in a bit of strife with in-mail ballot voting, where they can send it off to anyone, like a dead cat or anything, and they can get signed, and not a dead cat but dead person, and it can be quite easily manipulated to favor one party. Well, the thing is that they're protesting about they're all going out on the streets and they're protesting about the US Postal Service getting shut down, but yet they still want mail-in ballot voting. But they're protesting outside, which means they can go to the polls anyway. Like they're contradicting themselves.
I think it's because the mail-in voting is supposed to be the alternative to in-person voting because of the shutdown coronavirus. It's supposed to be a safe way of voting without risking getting the virus.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah. What do you reckon? What do you reckon?
The Republicans, is obviously there's two sides. Pretty much, if you're a Republican, they don't really support it because they reckon it'll be used it'll be exploited, and so they'll lose the election. Democrats reckon it's that we need it because you can't delay the election. It's unconstitutional, and the Constitution. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in the Constitution, each election is held on the first Tuesday of November, right?
It is November 3rd. Lock that in, people.
So you can't delay the election, and so Democrats reckon it's not supporting mail-in voting is just a way to actually suppress voting of minority communities, people who are less, and actually just not just minorities, but just generally less people who are less likely to vote in general. But there's an interesting analysis I heard that not wanting email voting in a way is actually counterproductive to Trump, because Trump has a really big old kind of retired supporting base in Florida. And so they'd probably prefer to kind of do mail-in voting than risk getting the virus and dying, because they're older and more likely to die from the virus.
Interesting. No, it is an interesting analysis. But there's another analysis where the Democrats are using this ploy to prepare everyone for the big landslide victory of the Trump train in 2020, because they know that they're losing and he's going to win. And so then they can bring out and say that he cheated with mail-in ballot voting. What do you reckon about that? Like they're trying to do 4D chess and trying to out-checkmate.
Wait, are you saying you reckon the Democrats know they're losing?
Yeah, because in the recent polls, I'll get it up actually. Trump gained. He gained points.
Yeah, the polls are changing. I remember a few weeks ago I said, at this point in time, if nothing changes, Biden's guaranteed to win. I did say that that's assuming nothing changes. But you can't assume that nothing will change. Politics is volatile, right?
Oh, it's a crazy environment, isn't it? It's a crazy landscape.
Yeah, so now it seems to be like the more the more Biden talks and stuff, the less popular he becomes, because people start hearing his voice and they're like, oh, I don't really like him anymore. Because it seems like there's one theory, which is that in the initial polls, a lot of people said they vote for Biden because, Biden was just kind of staying inside in his basement, not doing anything, and just kind of letting Trump stuff up himself. But now it seems like, just like what Hillary did, the more he talks, the more disliked he becomes. So now instead of like an average 10-point lead, it's now almost within the margin of error, like 50-50. So like, it's like now, if the one CNN poll is true, that Biden's only winning by 4 percentage points, that's within the margin of error. So that means it's anyone's game.
50-50, and that's come from CNN.
And that's crazy, because I just don't quite understand how the margin would be that close, even given how much Trump is stuffed up with the virus. Like, don't you think?
Oh, I think from an outside view, we're getting a lot of if you're in America, you would understand it a lot more to what's going on, because part of the reason why I don't think coronavirus will affect him at all, but from the onset, we think it will affect him, is because a lot of censorship of doctors that have went viral about these hydrochloroquine and using zinc as a way to combat early stages of COVID, and it's shown to be effective. But the doctors have
You
then
reckon it's
become
worked?
deplatformed and censored of Facebook, and I think it's working. It's backfiring because you
Do you
can't
mean
really
those
censor.
doctors who? Do you mean those doctors who gave that speech?
Which one? What I mean, was it the
It was reported
African
by Breitbart.
American?
Yeah,
Yeah,
her.
that one. But it just gives more rise to what people are
They're a
thinking. Is
fringe,
that
but aren't they a fringe though in the medical community?
what do you mean fringe?
Like they don't represent, like their opinion does not represent the mainstream opinion in the medical community
Well, the medical
about the virus
community.
being over exaggerated and hydrochloroquine, whatever how you pronounce it, is good. So
Yeah,
look,
it's
I haven't.
yeah.
I was just quickly. I was just going to say I haven't actually done a lot of research about hydrochloroquine, but so I can't really comment if it's effective. I'm just kind of going off just the medical, the advice of medical experts who are saying that it doesn't really work. But I mean, but even if it doesn't work, there are much sillier things Trump has said. Remember when he said, like, we're gonna try and get the sunlight in, maybe get disinfectant, put it
Well,
inside the body.
he's taking the piss. Like the
No,
media
no,
takes
he
those
wasn't.
snippets.
He
He
wasn't
was.
taking the piss. No, I reckon he
He
was being
was
pretty
taking the
serious.
piss. No, it wasn't being serious.
No, he was being pretty serious.
No,
But I
I don't
mean,
reckon why.
it doesn't really matter because there are much worse things to criticize Trump about. So yeah,
But
yeah, you're right. The media gets too preoccupied with some stuff he says.
I
Like
think
I
it's
say,
I think it's a big distraction on other things as well.
yeah, like the
That
real
are going
issues.
on, the real issues, which is quite hard to. The problem that I have is that I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast of Edward Snowden and how he was talking about how he leaked something that was important, that was infringing on our constitutional rights of getting spied upon by the US government. And
Yeah, NSA spying.
how we got
Patriot Act.
called a traitor and all those nasty things, he had to leave. I think that's goes to show that the intelligence community, no matter where you are in the world, have so much power. When we're meant to be such an open society, there's so many secrets that we don't know about. And that comes back to AIs because everything we search up on about the news is given to us by the art of artificial intelligence. It's given to us by AI, the Google system. It puts
Algorithm.
up the algorithm. It puts up very closely resembling articles. Every article that is done on a certain topic, for example, the coronavirus, that comes out at the same time, all have the same like titles in it, if you look at it. And what I'm trying to get at is that if we don't really know what's going on because the means of information that we're trying to look for is utilized by corporations to show us what they want us to see. We're not going to find everything on Google. That's the thing, and that's the annoying thing about this whole coronavirus political thingamajig is that people say, "Oh, search Google," and you know that it's deadly. But what if you think about it on the other side? Isn't that what the big companies want us to believe?
Believe what?
Do you know where I'm coming from? Was I using too many words
No,
to
I just
explain
mean no. You're making sense. I just mean believe what they want us to
like
believe.
believe what they want us to believe, their narrative.
Yeah, I'm just looking up something because I was looking up the thing about Google, how they're telling Australians, they're warning them about the new agreement.
Yeah, the new agreement, how it's going to destroy media corporations are going to be. Well, read it out. What does it say?
Well, I'm just trying to find it. I think from my memory, it's something about that. If Google wants to provide search results for certain things, that is reported by Australian media. They have to pay the Australian media companies money, I think.
So money to Rupert Murdoch.
Well, yeah, that would be one thing. Just going off, just changing the subject just a little bit. Did you about Rupert Murdoch? The government, they gave Rupert Murdoch they gave the Murdoch Media News Corp like $100 million subsidy.
Oh, then there's some conflict of interest there. It's not the government that we have is weak as piss. ScoMo is the weakest leader I've ever seen.
They're cutting funding for the ABC. They're cutting funding for the ABC, but they're fine giving money to the News Corp, the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party.
But then again, ABC doesn't really focus on remote regions. It focuses on more left. You know what I'm talking about? More city centric populaces.
Well, actually, the ABC has actually proved to be quite useful in warning rural Australians about bushfires and actually providing alerts and information about it. So ABC proved to be very critical.
But the problem with ABC though is that it doesn't have a lot of conservative opinions on it.
Yeah, that's starting to change though, because
there has been some opinion pieces that have been enraging the Twitter left.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to Twitter.
Oh, Twitter's crazy, man. You shouldn't get into it.
I can't find it. I'm not sure what to type in. It's Google, Australian government,
and Google letter.
All right. Open letter to Australians. Okay. So let's hear Google's perspective. What do they have to say? So, so the way we search on Google every day is now at risk from new regulation.
How's that possible?
The law would force Google to give an unfair advantage to one group of businesses, so news media, over everyone else who has a website. So news media businesses alone would be given information that...
Miggy. Uh-oh. He's cooked it. That's not good. Michael. Send him a quick text. See what's going on. Hold fire, people. Hold fire. Right. Oh, just dropped. It's only me. Welcome. I think his Wi-Fi cooked it. Oh, there he is. He's back.
NBN. Yeah.
NBN? Oh, terrible.
Blame the Liberal government. Okay, I'm just going to go to my hotspot. I've got a lot of data left, so
let's see how it goes. Oh, absolutely. Oh, no. Oh, he's switching over to the hotspot. People, don't drop out. Walnuts are a good source.
Okay.
Response. You're in?
That should be a stable connection now. So where did I cut off?
You're talking about Google, and you were talking about the letter that was saying that it's going to affect how everyday Australians are using Google.
I said search data may be at risk because Google may have to tell media companies how they gain access to our data, and so the data would be handed over to the media businesses, and there's no way of knowing how protected it is. So that goes to last week for how we talked about Australia's cybersecurity is really poor. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, but like then again, you can say, well, Google's probably already given that to corporations anyway. Our data.
That is true. I mean, I thought of it as a bit hypocritical because Google, they give their results through like cookies and everything, and
it's a profitable business.
They give it to a lot of other businesses, and I don't know if it's Google, maybe it's not Google, but I know other companies like Facebook and Apple, they've been voluntarily working with the US government in actually handing over people's private information to the government.
Really?
As well, yeah. NSA spying, Patriot Act.
I've seen that.
Hurting the free services you use. So
stuff them. You know what? Stuff them. I don't care. Hey Michael, I want you to see this documentary that I sent to you. The documentary Plandemic, right? I want to see how long we can have this documentary streaming until we get taken down. Because I guarantee you we'll get taken down.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I couldn't send any links to it. It was crazy. But
can you play it here?
Yeah, I can play it here. We'll see if it works. Hold your horses.
So I'm just recently looking at the conversation here, and it says that Google's claims don't stack up. So they claim that they may have to pay for content from media businesses is not exactly true.
Bloody hell. All right, I'm going to share the thing. I'm going to see how long it takes until our stream gets taken down. It's an experiment. My entire screen will share that. Right, you can see it? Right.
Yep.
Everyone, whoever's watching this, take the pandemic with a grain of salt, but it's quite interesting. All right? And Michael, I want you to see the first bit of it. We'll see how long.
All right.
Oh, that's right. I was typing a random email. But yeah, whatever. Oh, I hate that. But trust me, I want to see how long it takes until the stream gets taken down. We'll get shadow banned or something. How's it coming, Michael? Is it doing all right?
I can't hear.
You can't hear it?
No.
Right. Can you hear it?
No.
How the hell is it not working? Right.
How'd you? Because I remember you played another video. You played a video once, but that was on was that on this thing as well? The Epstein Island video.
Oh, there we go. There you go.
Okay.
Can you hear it?
No.
Do you reckon it's getting banned? Because we can't hear it. How about if I take my headphones out? I'll take my headphones out and see if it works then.
And created a digital freedom platform, a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and available exclusively on our website at freedomplatform.tv. This was only made possible thanks to the generous donations
I don't know why it's glitching out.
35,000 people around the world we affectionately call the London Real Army.
Oh, shut up with your propaganda. Just get onto it, mate.
/give.
Wasn't he like a banker?
Yeah, he was a banker. I think he's relapsed. He's a heroin addict or something.
And that is why we are broadcasting here today. At London Real, we have been
Fuck. There we go. All right, let's watch it. Watch it. Tell me what you think, Michael. I want to see how long.
Let's test Facebook.
On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York, as well as our larger virtual audience participating online today. The Event 201 scenario is fictional. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
There's been some conspiracy theories that are around about the potential that pharmaceutical companies or the UN have released this for their own benefit.
And maybe this is a time for us to showcase some cases where we are able to bring forward some directors and leave it before the courts to decide whether they have...
I reckon we'll get shadow banned after this, Michael.
New coronavirus. Infected people got respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia.
In related news, a significant demand for personal protective equipment like N95 masks and gloves are on the rise. Patients are overwhelming healthcare facilities. People are avoiding public spaces out of fear of infection and in compliance with public health recommendations. Our U.S. affiliate has just released polling results on public expectations for a vaccine, and 65% of those polled are eager to take the vaccine, even if it's experimental.
I'm not optimistic about having the vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
With enough money and political will, anything is possible.
Penalties have been put in place for spreading harmful falsehoods, including arrests.
If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
What exactly are the risks and benefits of staying home from work? Absolutely, we need to save lives, but we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy.
The world saw large-scale protests and in some places riots. This led to
what do you reckon, Michael, so far?
In some countries and even
pause it for a second.
Lost trust in their respective administration. Economists
so
say
who made the
caused by such a pandemic.
Pardon?
So who made the simulation?
It was like the simulation of all the countries and stuff, apparently.
Who made it?
I don't know. It's like the COVID response team. I think they'll get into that later.
Because it's so accurate, pretty much, to what's really been happening. People protesting, people not wanting to take the vaccine, lockdowns, economic collapse.
It's pretty crazy.
The economy to reopen. It seems to be they really understood what would happen. They really predicted it well.
I reckon we're going to be absolutely I reckon this could be the end of Manus Politico, but I want you to watch it and tell me what you think, because it's a crazy documentary.
Last for years, the societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad?
Oh, boom! All right, take it with a grain of salt.
So they're saying that it's a man-made virus. Is that what they're saying?
I think so.
On May 4th, 2020, as part of a documentary series called Plandemic, I released an interview featuring science whistleblower, Dr. Judy Mikovits. The interview received fierce backlash, declared dangerous conspiracy theories. As a father and a veteran media producer, there was no way that I would release harmful information into the world during a moment as vulnerable as now. I had known Dr. Judy for 2 years before filming her interview. I read her book, then thoroughly researched and vetted her story. After interviewing her legal team, former colleagues, and people who have known her for decades, one thing I can say without question is, Judy Mikovits is one of the most honest, caring, and courageous women I've ever known. Why then would the most powerful forces of big tech, politics, media, and medicine go to such extreme measures to silence her voice all over the world? And why did all of the debunkers invest so much ink and airtime defaming Dr. Judy's character while avoiding very real revelations pertaining to patents, conflicts of interest, and the deadly corruption pervading our global health organizations?
They make good point.
To get to the bottom of these questions, as well as many others, I've spent the last several weeks interviewing scholars from all over the world, among them top doctors, distinguished scientists, and Nobel laureates. I also sat down with Dr. Judy for a follow-up interview and to give her the opportunity to respond to critics. You can see that full interview on the Plandemic website. While you're there, make sure to dive down the rabbit hole, where you'll find additional videos, documents, and scientific studies that support the claims and perspectives put forth in the Plandemic series.
That's crazy, isn't it,
Here are a few
Michael?
highlights from my follow-up interview with Dr. Judy. What do you have to say to the people who have tried to minimize your involvement with HIV by stating that you were at the bottom of the totem pole, 13th author of a 13-member group of scientists?
Well, the 13th author is the senior author, so that means they're the most important author.
Why did you agree to retract your own XMRV paper?
The paper was actually force retracted. I was actually being held in jail.
You told me that you had financial offers to remain silent.
If you simply you made a mistake.
Dr. Judy Markovitz.
Say another word.
There's a bit of I don't know.
Your grants,
she got retracted, and apparently she got said that she got arrested.
My lawyer said, that's the best offer you're going to get. I said, you don't understand me. I don't need an offer. I've already lost everything. If I thought even one child or one grandma was injured or killed because I didn't do something, that would have ended my life as I know it. There was no money you could ever pay me to get me to cover this up. I will never stop telling the truth.
Is she an anti-vaxxer?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So I'm just reading here. It says she's been described as an anti-vaccination activist.
I'm the developer of linguistic genomics, which was the first platform on which you could determine the intent of communication rather than the literal artifact of communication. But we've also used that technology for a number of other applications in defense and intelligence and finance. And most notably, in the early 2000s, my company was responsible for bringing down what was at the time one of the largest tax frauds in US history. We maintained a series of inquiries into every individual, every organization, and every company that is involved in anything that either blurs the line of biological and chemical weapons or crosses that line in any of 168 countries. In 1999, there were 1 million patents digitized by IBM. And those 1 million patents were the first time human innovation had been put into an electronic digital searchable format. We took that information and we did a very simple exercise using our linguistic genomics technology, where I made the horrific assessment that approximately 1/3 of all patents filed in the United States were functional forgeries, meaning that while they had linguistic variations, they actually covered the same subject matter. In 1999, patents on coronavirus started showing up, and thus began the rabbit trail.
March 2003, panic grips Hong Kong as a deadly new virus sweeps through the city.
In 2003, the Center for Disease Control saw the possibility of a gold strike, and that was the coronavirus outbreak that happened in Asia. They saw that a virus they knew could be easily manipulated was something that was very valuable, and in 2003, they sought to patent it. And they made sure that they controlled the proprietary rights to the disease, to the virus, and to its detection, and all of the measurement of it.
How mad's that?
We know that Anthony Fauci, that Ralph Baric, that the Center for Disease Control, and the laundry list of people who wanted to take credit for inventing coronavirus were at the hub of this story. From 2003 to 2018, they controlled 100% of the cash flow that built the empire around the industrial complex of coronavirus.
The World Health Organization has officially named the novel coronavirus
the novel coronavirus outbreak.
The World Health Organization has declared an international public health emergency.
It doesn't mean they invented the virus. It just means they're opportunists, right? All the companies
started with Dr. Ralph Baric in 1999.
The major characteristics of SARS, MERS, and SARS coronavirus 2. It's a good way.
Ralph Baric is the researcher at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who's famous for his chimeric coronavirus research. In 2002, there was a recognition that the coronavirus was seen as an exploitable mechanism for both good and ill. On April the 25th, 2003, the U.S. Center for Disease Control filed a patent on the coronavirus transmitted to humans. Under 35 U.S. Code Section 101,
wait a second. So
nature is prohibited.
Pause it for a second.
Yeah.
So does that mean if the CDC had a patent on the virus
and all the things tested,
then they would be the sole distributors of the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
But isn't that a good thing though? So that way it's provided by the government instead of private businesses who could price gouge you.
I think this is where it comes into the next bit. I think it explains it a bit more into what's happening with all the patents. It just seems.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're not saying that the coronavirus is man-made, but rather people are exploiting the situation to make lots of money, right?
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Well, I mean, pharmaceutical companies do that all the time, so it's not a surprise.
We need to take it down. We're going to take it down. And we haven't been taken down yet, Michael. We're too small. Either SARS coronavirus was manufactured, therefore making a patent on it legal, or it was natural, therefore making a patent on it illegal. If it was manufactured, it was a violation of biological and chemical weapons, treaties, and laws. If it was natural, filing a patent on it was illegal. Then either outcome, both are illegal. In the spring of 2007, the CDC filed a petition with the Patent Office to keep their application confidential and private. They actually filed patents on not only the virus, but they also filed patents on its detection and a kit to measure it. Because of that CDC patent, they had the ability to control who was authorized and who was not authorized to make independent inquiries into coronavirus.
Oh.
You look at the virus, you cannot measure it, you cannot develop a test kit for it. And by ultimately receiving the patents that constrained anyone from using it, they had the means, they had the motive, and most of all, they had the monetary gain from turning coronavirus from a pathogen to profit.
Developing and owning a coronavirus vaccine has become a biotech arms race with political overtones.
This vaccine gold rush is starting to bother me. Gold rush. Let's keep that in mind.
And so somewhere between 2012 and 2013, something happened. The federal funding for research that was feeding into places like Harvard, Emory, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that funding suddenly became impaired by something that happened at the NIH, where the NIH got this little tiny bit of clarity.
What did it say? Did it say the escape of a pathogen?
Wait, how about 5 Act?
Just before the headline.
What it's a bit
overtones.
Yeah.
This vaccine gold rush is starting to bother me. Gold rush. Let's keep that in mind.
And so somewhere between 2012 and 2013, something happened. The federal funding for research that was feeding into places like Harvard, Emory, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that funding suddenly became
the
impaired
risk of a pandemic from release, escape of potential pandemic pathogen.
Where the NIH got this little tiny moment of clarity and said, I think something we're doing is wrong. And in 2013, the NIH said, gain-of-function research on coronavirus should be suspended. The National Institutes of Health had a moral and social and potentially legal reason to object to research. But the letters that were sent to the researchers essentially said, you are receiving notice that we're telling you to stop. And now on the bottom of the page, we're going to clarify what stop means. Keep going.
The pause is voluntary.
hot in 2014 and 15, what do? You offshore the research. You fund the Wuhan Institute of Virology to do the stuff that sounds like it's getting a little edgy.
Oh, Daily Mail.
But do you do it straight way?
Don't trust Daily Mail.
You run the money through a series of cover organizations to make it look like you're funding a U.S. operation, which then is so the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The U.S. could say China did it. China could say the U.S. did it. And the cool thing is both of them are almost telling the truth.
It's true that they have a big lab in Wuhan where they make stuff.
It's a bit. Tell NBC News that they are examining whether the virus accidentally came from a Chinese lab.
Chinese officials pushing back against that claim on Thursday, tweeting that it might be the U.S. Army who brought the epidemic to Wuhan.
He was the first person in the world to look at an epidemic and study its characteristics and prove that it was due to biological warfare and was not a natural occurrence. So I published that 28 years ago. Early in this pandemic, I did not think the coronavirus was a natural occurrence from bats. I feel quite convinced that this was a laboratory-designed organism. There have been hundreds and hundreds of leaks from high-containment laboratories that do research on pathogenic coronaviruses and other potentially lethal organisms. I was particularly interested in a paper that came out in Nature Medicine by 5 scientists claiming that it was definitely a natural occurrence rather than a lab construct. But the did not hold water. They didn't really have a lot of scientific sense.
He's just a thought. So he is just a thought. So so she's saying that it's man-made, right? Because there's just been so many of them. But I mean, there's so many labs around the world. If you got like 1,000 labs, and there's like a 1% chance of a breach, that means 100 of them will have a breach. That means 100 viruses would escape. So
you're on something there. You're onto something there.
So, I mean, maybe it's not necessarily that it's man-made, but I mean, even given the statistical likelihood of anything going wrong, even though it's low, if you've got so many labs around the world, you know, one of them's gonna
expose it to the world. So I think that contradicts itself, doesn't it? It's because statistically, maybe it could explain it later on, but
statistically it could be possible. Yeah. I mean, there's also even talk about if we're even equipped to create such a virus that is this bad, right? But I mean, as we said before, there's so many secrets. We don't know. So who knows what the type of viruses they've been making?
But the weird thing is that this whole documentary is censored, so it just makes it even more likely that it could be happening. If I was the big boys controlling like all the information, I wouldn't censor it because then it just justifies their cause. Yeah,
I guess. I mean, they probably wouldn't like it because it helps. It's pretty much it empowers the conspiracy theorists.
It does.
And the thing is, a lot of these conspiracy theorists, a lot of them are wrong, and their ideas are quite dangerous in undermining public health. But you're right. If you're censoring that type of stuff, you're pretty much only emboldening them even more by kind of confirming what they're thinking, that their ideas are right and that don't want to be hurt and are threatening those in power. Yeah. I mean, just another thing. I mean, like, I mean, don't you think like because as the human race, we are always going to other animals' environments, right? Yeah. And so because we're going to those uncharted parts of the world, you know, we're exposing ourselves, you know, to different, you know, microorganisms, and so we are interacting with all these animals and stuff like, you know, the wet markets and stuff that's unregulated. So it does make sense that that you would find these type of outbreaks happening, especially in countries like Asia, where you got those wet markets that are unregulated, and they eat, and in people in China, they eat almost everything. I mean, that's not me telling me, that's my Chinese language teacher. She said in our lecture, if you think of an animal when the Chinese eat it. So
that's because of the Great Leap Forward, is because they didn't have enough food under the Mao guidance, the leadership. So they created these wet markets, so the people that couldn't get the government food would be able to eat, and then just became a tradition after that to eat anything.
But I mean, if this stuff is man-made, I mean, we're pretty lucky that. I guess they're saying it's man-made because if we're interacting with with the rest of the environment, with other organisms that we're not immune to, then we're pretty lucky that there aren't more outbreaks, right? We're pretty lucky that we've only had one outbreak every 100. In last outbreak was 100 years.
Yeah.
So I'm actually thinking now, were these people up to the Spanish flu is man-made if those people lived back then?
Well, I don't know. I don't think there would have been enough information I don't think people were educated enough to understand what a virus is, or because back then they didn't have the internet, and only select few could go to university or go to education.
Yeah. I mean, the scientists that existed back then, they did know about viruses. Yeah.
Yeah.
The scientists back then knew about viruses. But I'm just wondering,
penicillin as well.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder if they would have been conspiracy theorists about penicillin too.
Maybe. Well, there was conspiracy theories about bloody the .com thing, or 2000s, where all the computers were going to stop.
Yeah, there's conspiracy theories about literally everything. Let's continue. It's interesting.
Are you finding it interesting?
Yeah, I mean, it's not completely convincing, but it's interesting.
Very important people started parroting what this paper said. And so that, of course, got me scratching my head saying, why are these people risking their reputation when it's obviously illogical, doesn't hold water? Somebody must have made them publish this, and somebody must have told these other people that they have to say it's a great piece of science.
You were quoted as saying it was a meticulous job done professionally.
It could be done by somebody very expert in molecular biology, I think.
Mais c'est pas naturel, c'est ce que vous voulez dire?
Non, ce n'est pas naturel, c'était un travail de professionnel, un travail de biologiste moléculaire.
A winner of a Nobel Prize is saying it's man-made.
D'horloger, dire au niveau des séquences.
Mais dans quel but?
Dans quel but, ça, ce n'est pas clair. Moi, j'expose, si vous voulez, mon travail, c'est d'exposer les faits, c'est tout.
See, the problem with all of this is the evidence is right in front of our face. And when confronted with evidence, we are told fact checkers are somehow transcendent.
The pace of our modern world makes it nearly impossible for working people to research the events and policies that shape their lives. When seeking answers to life's most pressing questions, where do we go first? Google. Enter the subject, hit go, and there it is. Only what they want us to see. In today's culture of copy and paste journalism, it's common for hundreds of unrelated outlets to feature the exact same report. This is not the result of laziness. This is by design. When we see identical headlines across seemingly unrelated platforms, the logical mind concludes, well then, it must be true. The illusion that numerous news sources have arrived at the same conclusion gives us confidence to share the chosen narrative. And just like that, we become the unwitting pushers of propaganda. Search engines are the holy grail for those seeking to control the narrative.
Google is already more powerful in terms of its control over people's lives than almost every government on the planet.
As the most influential search engine in the world, through its ubiquitous reach, Google has more power to influence US elections than any foreign nation.
And then they start whinging about the new laws.
Committee. You said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big text manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election.
And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
The blacklists is something that Google said didn't exist. And they testified that under oath.
And nothing but the truth to help you guys.
Now, me as an engineer, I just did a search on Google's internal search engine, and guess what I found? It had blacklisted search terms like cancer cures. Why is Google deciding what people can and cannot search for?
What was once an efficient tool for navigating the world of information is now a network for global surveillance, data collection, and social engineering. Now let's take a look at a few of the most commonly used fact checkers, beginning with Snopes. The husband and wife duo of David and Barbara Mickelson founded Snopes.com in 1995. They had no journalism background or training whatsoever. They built their fact-checking empire by using Google as the primary verifying source. The Mickelsons divorced in 2015. Barbara sued David for embezzling money that he allegedly spent on prostitutes, as well as a lavish honeymoon with
The
his
problem
new
with fact checkers is that who checks the fact checkers?
or joining the Snopes cast of characters.
Who does check the fact checkers?
In 2017, David Mickelson's new business partners filed a lawsuit accusing Mickelson of multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement.
Okay, well, we haven't been taken off yet.
The internet's
I know.
go-to source.
It's a bit
for
weird,
the
isn't
truth.
it? Do you want to stop it there to talk something?
History of
To talk about something else before we finish up?
Yeah. So that will probably, yeah. It's just it's a bit crazy. I'll stop sharing it.
I just made a mathematical error before. I said 100. I meant 10. There's 1,000 labs around the world, and 1% chance of a breach. It would be there'd be 10 that would have a breach.
It's a bit crazy though. That's the thing, because it does make some points with how Google does shadow ban certain key terms and how it does promote certain news that not necessarily the everyday person can literally click on. And
Yeah,
what do you think about?
Yeah, they have monopoly and a lot of power, so that's why I was very skeptical about them complaining about the new laws, because I'm just not sure if you can trust them. And just going on the conversation here, it's a fact. Ironically, we're looking at, we're talking about how fact checkers aren't true, but I'm just looking here on the conversation, and they're fact checking Google's claims. They say they're not true. But they actually talk about an example that happened in Spain, where similar laws were introduced in Spain on Google. So that's pretty much, if we want to know what's going to happen, if these new laws happen, we just look at Spain. And I don't think. Spain's doing okay, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I hope the Spanish people are doing all right. But that does make you think, though, with what type of power and what they want people to see, which shouldn't be the case. And they always lie. It's just the big companies. They always lie. It wouldn't be a problem if they didn't lie all the time.
I mean, yeah. So I don't know how true Google's claims are and what's happened in Spain, but yeah, it's always good to have a bit of healthy skepticism as well. So yeah, I guess blacklisting those type of search terms. What would they do if someone searches that up?
I'll search it up right now. Cure for cancer. Just cause I don't know. Or I use Bing actually, so
Bing.
I don't know.
You don't trust Google, so you use Bing.
I want to use a new search engine though. That's a bit better.
What happens?
I want to go on the dark web. Have you been on it?
Blacklist. No. What happens when a blacklisted term is searched? So what does this mean? It just what happens is you can still search for them. But it says the issue is that when you type them up, Google Instant stop reporting results on the fly. You must hit enter to see results. I'm not sure what that means, but I guess it's just saying they just try and make it harder for you to see results.
Which is a bit weird. I don't know.
I guess they're doing that. I mean, the best case scenario is, okay, there's pretty much two ways you can explain this. One is that they are censoring people because they're trying to hide the truth, or two, they're well-intended, trying to do the right thing and trying to prevent spread of misinformation. That's the second explanation. What do you think it is? Do you reckon they're trying to do the right thing by trying to stop the spread of misinformation, but unintentionally are being counterproductive in helping promote these conspiracies, or are they purposely trying to hide the truth?
Purposely.
You reckon purposely?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just can't trust big corporations. Because like Noam Chomsky said, in the book of Global Discontents that I'm reading by him, he says that all the surveys of all the CEOs, they don't care about the future but tomorrow's profit. That's all they care about is tomorrow's profit.
Yeah, and that's not good, because you need short term. I mean, you need long term thinking. When you're planning, just thinking about short term, because the short term isn't always necessarily good for the long term. Like what you do tomorrow might give you instant satisfaction, but might not be good in a year's time.
No.
So you need that type of
You have to 4D chess life. Literally, you have to go super hard all the time.
You need that type of 4D thinking. For example, on an individual level, maybe in the short term you might think it's fun to go out, and party every night, party every weekend, spend $100 in drinks. Or instead, you could, kind of limit that and just save more of it for the future, for your retirement or deposit for a home. So,
where do you reckon? Where do you reckon this all lands us then? What do you reckon?
I reckon.
What do you reckon will be? When do you reckon we'll get out of lockdown? Do you reckon we'll get out of lockdown? What do you reckon?
Okay. I was of the opinion that lockdown would be extended because the number of new cases in the first few weeks weren't very promising. But now that it's going down, it could mean that we lift the lockdown in September 13. And also, just to kind of summarize my thoughts on this whole issue about censorship and these conspiracy theories, what I can say is that there is a lot of stuff we don't know. As I said before at the start, there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And from the stuff we do know, it does make me speculate more, be more skeptical about what else is happening, and perhaps is it worse than the stuff that has been made public. So really, we don't know. There's a lot we don't know, but there is stuff happening behind closed doors that we don't know about.
Yeah.
What it exactly is, I'm not sure.
Do you reckon
tend to be.
Though? Do you reckon everything we've witnessed in 2020 will be revealed.
No. I mean, if there was some sort of conspiracy for the virus, which I tend to doubt, but if there was some sort of conspiracy, they wouldn't reveal it. But that's if there was one. I tend to lean more that it's probably, not man-made. But again, there's a lot. The problem is with the internet age, there's a lot of information out there, and you're just not quite sure what to believe in.
Mm. And it's not when Google does manipulate the search term results.
Yeah. So a lot of these conspiracy theorists, they tend to be over the top people,
Alex Jones.
Yeah, they tend to go over the top, and so that kind of discredits some of their other claims that they make, which actually could turn out to be true. Because I mean, what Alex Jones has occasionally turned out to be right. Occasionally, maybe 99%.
Back in 2002.
Yeah, like maybe 99% of the time he's wrong, but maybe that 1% he's actually onto something. So, yeah, there's stuff going on that we don't know behind closed doors. We'll never know we'll never know a lot of this stuff. But what is happening behind closed doors? I don't know the extent to it. It's most likely not. It's most likely not as bad as the conspiracy theorists say, but it's probably something to be concerned about if we found out about it.
What do you reckon it could be, Michael? Tell me.
I don't know. Well, as I just said, I don't know. We don't know because it could be anything, right? Like I don't think people in the general public would have predicted that there was some sort of pedophile ring happening with Jeffrey Epstein with an island, or that there was or that there were these massive sex predators running Hollywood. Most people wouldn't have thought that would ever exist.
But it does.
Yeah. So we don't know.
We don't know either way, do we? We really don't.
It's a big club. It's a big club, Mathers. We're not in it.
And do you reckon do you reckon the vaccine will make us get out of lockdown and everything will get back to normal? It just seems a bit weird with that. That's the story that they're going with, is that it won't be normal until you get the vaccine. What do you reckon?
That's if the vaccine is even successful in the trials, right?
Surely, with all the different boards that validate the vaccines, surely they're not all paid off, and surely there's someone that knows, like, if they know it's bad, they're going to say it's bad and it's not going to get approved.
Like some whistleblowers.
Yeah, because
I'm not worried about. Look, I'm not worried about if a dodgy vaccine getting approved, because I mean, just think about it. If a dodgy vaccine does get approved and it kills people, that would actually affect the profit margins of their business in the future, because then people wouldn't trust them and take their vaccines. So they have an incentive to actually provide vaccines that work and don't kill people. So,
what about the depopulation thing? Do you reckon they're gonna? Because you've seen Bill Gates get all weird and squirmy and everything when he talks about it.
Well, the world population is expected to peak at 10 billion, because a lot of Western countries, as we become economically developed, we have gender equality, women can make their own choices with their bodies, we tend to have less babies, right? So Asia is also, Western countries are expected, their populations are expected to decline without migration. Asia's is expected to start declining as well. Africa is expected to keep continuing to climb too. expected to continue to climb. So I don't really hold the conspiracy that there's some sinister plot to reduce the world population, because I mean it's going to naturally peak, because I mean it's already problems happening in Europe, where they're starting to peak. I mean, even in Australia here, our natural birth rate, well, it's below the replacement rate, I think. Is it?
It's weird. It's weird. I don't understand. I just don't understand 2020. It just doesn't feel right, does it? This whole year, it feels weird.
Well, you've been watching a lot more conspiracy theory videos than me, so.
What do you reckon, Michael?
Must be why. Well, I mean, you don't need to watch conspiracy theories to know 2020 has been weird. Ask anyone. 2020 has been really weird. In that it's just been an unprecedented year of so many disasters.
In that the less that we're trusting the government less.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, because you can't blindly follow authority. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me, this whole thing.
Yeah, you need to go on.
I just don't understand the blackmail of saying we won't get back to normal unless you get the vaccine. If you don't get the vaccine, we're not going back to normal. And I don't think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think it's because they're very desperate for things to get back to normal, and they're just fed up with the anti-vaxxers.
The government did it anyway. Like it's on them. They didn't have to. They didn't have to follow the rest of the world when the World Health Organization already was found out to be in bed with China. Like, what about Vietnam? They're not in bloody lockdown, are they? They're vibing. Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah, they did really well, didn't they?
They're vibing at the moment, but yet all Western countries have to stay in lockdown because it's the best way to do it. But yet the government know that's killing the economy. If they know it's going to kill the economy and killing the way we live, then why are they still doing it and forcing us to get? That's the question I have. It's like it doesn't really add up.
So they probably think that we shouldn't put money before the health of people. But some people reckon that the cost of the economic cost of the lockdown has been greater than any potential loss of life that could have occurred.
And it's controlling people of the way they spend and live their life, and we're not. Yeah.
I mean, look. These are difficult times for politicians, because
they suck. All of them suck.
You made this point off air that it's political suicide for people like Daniel Andrews to do these lockdowns and stuff. It doesn't necessarily help their election. So it's not like they want it, because they'd much prefer. I mean, the governments would much prefer for there to not be government. It's not like the government wanted this and they wanted a lockdown, because they'd much prefer for there to be no lockdown and for the economy to keep chugging along. So that way, they can keep getting their the government can keep getting money from taxes, and then brag about their economic management. So,
but then again,
and it's risky doing this type of lockdowns and stuff. It's very risky.
If they know something, and that we're kept in lockdown because the governments all know, everyone's in on it. But then that doesn't seem feasible, because surely someone with a conscience would say, "Nah, this isn't right." If that's the case. But then people like maybe we'll know but then there's already whistleblowers about this whole thing with the documentary we're watching now. There's tons of people whistleblowing everything.
Yeah, it's just the whole virus thing. It's not in the best interest of governments. to have a huge virus and stuff, to have a pandemic, because it affects their because it affects the economy really, and it can threaten the financial institutions as well, even the people in power. It can threaten them as well, because without government action, there would have been a very liquidity in the financial markets would have dried up. There would have been less flow of credit.
If Australia just went with normal business and we didn't lock down, only lock down international travel.
Okay, so if we lock down the borders almost straight away, we wouldn't have had this problem. This is where you got to put responsibility on our government, okay? Because once the virus gets out of China, right? It's now up to you to decide what do we do about it.
Just like that simulation that showed us.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Like how I was talking about how they the World Health Organization denied human-to-human transmission. So then the governments didn't take it seriously until it was too late to spread across the world, and then.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely blame to be put on the World Health Organization, because they lied about human transmission and stuff, and its severity. But at the same time, it's also governments as well. Like they should have done. Like that, our own governments could be held accountable, and because it's not like the virus would have equally impacted everyone in all countries, because what we've seen is that the countries that have responded better than others tend to have had less deaths and potentially maybe even less of an economic impact. For example, if you shut the country down early, do a full lockdown straight away, get it over and done with, you can then reopen quicker, instead of a very kind of slow, kind of prolonged shutdown that keeps dragging on and hurting business.
That's true. That's so true.
So yeah, so they should have. I mean, I was saying that we should have closed the borders earlier.
But it's like the government
at the time
hasn't been really listening. And the thing that annoys me is that I'm probably going to make a video after this and post it, is that this whole virus has been politicized to the point where it's turning us against each other. Literally. People who don't pay attention to the news won't have a problem with this and go about the day-to-day lives. But literally, you've got your conspiracy dudes claim one thing, and then the other people claiming that they're crazy, but then they're saying, well, your freedoms are going away, and they go, oh, no, because of blah, blah, blah. And it's just constant back and forth. Nothing's really getting done. The government's fueling it because people want to know the whole story. They're not very transparent. That goes for federal and state level. And it's making it politicized. The coronavirus shouldn't be politicized. You shouldn't politicize human health. And if you politicize it, it turns people against each other and just makes everything a lot harder to progress. Lacks innovation. Things go wrong.
Unfortunately, a lot of things are politicized now. I reckon we can probably agree on this, probably because of the internet and social media.
Because of Twitter. We need to get rid of Twitter. It sucks. Literally, it sucks.
Not just Twitter, just internet in general. It's just because there's so much information out there that everyone's voice can be heard, even the stupid ones. So if they're compelling, charismatic enough, and engaging enough, they can get people to believe them. So yeah. So to conclude on that, what we've agreed is that the government doesn't help itself when it makes mistakes and when it lies.
Yeah.
But also, and that they could have done something earlier. They probably could have closed the borders earlier to prevent a pandemic from happening, and that also very, very, very unlikely that this was purposely done that governments purposely did this.
But we can't throw all possibilities out though, because at the end of the day, the truth will come out.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think, I think it's a bit ridiculous to say that this was, you know, that the government wanted our country to get sick. I mean, you could say that maybe it was a man-made virus that escaped from a lab and it got out of control. That is more plausible, okay, because there are labs out there that exist. But to say that our government intentionally wanted us to get sick doesn't make sense when they tried to do a lockdown to prevent us from getting sick. That doesn't make sense. So they want
scientific backing that lockdown actually does protect us. You know what I mean?
What?
There's no studies. No studies have shown that lockdown doesn't really protect us.
What do you mean? Of course it has. You can tell.
This, but there's no scientific backing.
No, because countries that have had more extreme lockdown laws tend to have had less deaths per capita than like places like America.
But
like America,
they count COVID deaths on everything. Even if people don't die of COVID, they still count them as COVID deaths.
Where'd you get that from?
You search it up now. I can't give you exact search it up. COVID-19. Yeah, like my girlfriend Casey, her mum works. I won't say where she works, but they do something. Actually, I won't talk about that because I think it's on a live stream. So,
look, okay, even if it's like,
well, why would they do it? Why would they change?
None of these things make sense, though. None of these things make sense. I mean, even if because even if you're saying that some of the numbers aren't real, that they've been distorted a bit, it's very unlikely that they distorted it by increasing by trying to increase the actual numbers by tenfold, right? Because what you can actually see is that countries that have handled it better in terms of the lockdown laws and the restrictions, they've had less deaths. Okay. For example, let's look at a few examples. New Zealand, they had very few deaths. One of the lowest per capita. Australia, we've had very few deaths. One of the lowest per capita. Same as Japan or South Korea. Their response was a bit different, but they still responded effectively by locking down some part of the economy and then making face masks and social distancing mandatory. But then countries that haven't handled it well by not doing any lockdowns, people not wearing face masks, like America, they've had really high. They've had really high cases in total number of deaths, right? Because people aren't social distancing there, and they're not locking down the states for long enough.
But listen to this, right? Sweden, the results were not perfect, like as Sweden failed to protect their care homes. By the time I landed in Stockholm, the death rate stood at almost 57 per 100,000 people, far worse than the neighbouring countries. In fairness, though, Sweden is in parts more densely populated than most of Norway. And Sweden's death rate is still lower than those in Belgium, Spain, Britain, and Italy, all of which did go into lockdown. So what did I make of it? Oh, this is from Daily Mail. You probably won't like it. After the negativity, paranoia, moaning, squabbling of Britain, Sweden was paradise.
What about America?
They've had a massive drop in cases in over 7 days, where it was 1,300 cases, and now it's dropped over just below 200.
Okay, so what did Sweden do, though?
They didn't lock anything down.
What did they do then?
They just let everyone go. They didn't wear face masks. No, they relied on people to do their own things and do their own part of managing a virus. So using your common sense, but not forcing it on the people to do what the government wants you to do.
Did they close did they close the lock? Did they lock down the aged care homes, for example?
No, they just used, which is probably the bad thing. But they still have a lot death rate. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand this whole aged care thing though, because people. I just don't understand how the government could cop that up so wrong when they already knew what the most prevalent age demographic is, which is more accessible. It's more prone to the coronavirus. They already knew that older people and people with underlying health conditions. Why didn't they do more into protecting them and allowing the rest of the country to use their common sense, know that there is a virus, don't sneeze in people's faces, wash your hands?
Because the problem is that no, I was just about to say the problem is Sweden might be. I don't know about the Sweden population, because they, for example, maybe because in countries like in countries like South Korea and Japan, they tend to be more trustworthy of authority, but in places like Australia, I don't know. Like it seems like if you didn't do any lockdown and you just let people handle it themselves, it probably wouldn't have gone well. Because not all countries are the same. Not all of them react the same to what the government tells them to do. Maybe I don't know about Sweden. Maybe Sweden, their government's more trustworthy because they tend to have their government tends to look after its people more, has a much stronger social safety net. Whereas in Australia, there's countless stories, countless people, the idiots, stupid people who are saying that refusing to wear face masks and saying they're immune to the virus, and then people protesting the lockdown, right?
But that doesn't help when they censor their opinions, though. That's the thing. Like that just gives fire to it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you shouldn't censor those opinions because, as you've said so many times, it actually helps make the case for those people that there is something to hide. When you, See, look, I didn't. But I mean, so you're saying that their population is more dense, right?
But it does have a lot of less people. It has 10 million to Britain's 70 million.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you take into account population density, 25 per kilometers squared. Okay, I'm looking at USA population density. It's probably lower, but even there you go. Okay, United States population density is actually more than Sweden. They have a higher death count, but the problem is, I think, putting it all on population density, I think that's a bit of a lazy cop because you can't just say it's all because of population density, because you've got so many other factors in play, like the public's perception and response to the virus and how governments respond to it. Right?
Yeah.
So, so I mean,
and guess what? ScoMo's backtracked over mandatory vaccine.
Yeah, has he? Yeah.
Back over mandatory coronavirus vaccine has highlighted the next nightmare in pandemic response. Has highlighted the next battle in pandemic, convincing everyone to get jabbed. Australia and most of the world have been put in on a holding pattern until a vaccine becomes available, with hopes this will be silver bullets return to life to normal. With Mr. Morrison's difficulties this week over his comments that a vaccine will be as mandatory as you can possibly make it, highlights that success in developing vaccine does not mean everyone will take it.
What does that mean, though? As mandatory as you can possibly make it? I mean, it's either mandatory or not mandatory, right? Either you have to take it or you don't have to.
I think the best way to do what they do with the flu vaccines and vaccinate the healthcare workers and the people that are working with people at the most at risk.
And the kids, right? Because no jab, no play with the kids. So that for children who want to go to childcare.
Because I know people in you should always have a choice, because when back in high school, you got your jabs for your like STIs and all that. There's still some
there will
people
be
that don't get their jabs. Some people, their parents didn't sign permission slips to get them vaccinated for those things, and no one batted an eyelid. So I think we need to have that choice to freely.
Yeah, because you can develop herd immunity if enough people become immune to it. So if it's not mandatory, because even I'm like, thinking, should it be mandatory? I don't know. Because I think the thing is, I think it's because I know as I said before, there's a no jab, no play policy with children, right? But I guess, right? And so, and because we already kind of have some sort of mandatory rules surrounding vaccines, the fact that we're just extending that to another vaccine, it scares people, I think, because there's a thing called the status quo bias. So like whatever the environment you're living in, you're used to it, right? But if it changes, people might become they might become hostile or a bit skeptical of it, right? Even if it's a new vaccine that's part of a mandatory program that covers other vaccines that people have already taken. So, like you said that you've been untrustworthy of the vaccine. You're not sure if you'll get it, right? Right. I reckon it could be because of like a status quo bias people have. That you're willing to take all these other vaccines, but now there's a new vaccine out, and because it's a new player in the vaccine world, you're a bit skeptical of it. So we'll just have to give it time.
But
if I'm making sense, am I making sense there?
You're making sense, and I think I went through a period this week where I think I went a bit mental with the conspiracy theories. I think I went a bit like I was going a bit crazy. I was going a bit crazy in my own head. But then again, it's always good to know what people are thinking and what people are saying, just so you're aware that if once the truth is revealed, you can prepare for anything. So if it is the case of depopulation, and it's a proven fact, because a lot of people are saying it's mark of the beast, which is like something in biblical terms. And this is where Alex Jones has gotten to me a little bit.
I think you've watched a bit too much of Alex Jones there, Elliot.
I like him because some of the stuff he says has come true, and it's always good to question the narrative. That's the main thing, because we can't blindly follow authority. I think there's bigger problems in the world than the coronavirus, such as human trafficking.
Yeah, we didn't get to that. Maybe maybe next week.
Next week, because I think human trafficking is literally, it's a topic that's not discussed. It needs to be discussed, and it's just with the Hollywood thing, and people wouldn't expect pedophiles in Hollywood, but there is, and it's more prevalent than we know. And Tom Hanks moving to Greece, where they have relaxed pedophile laws. It wouldn't surprise.
He moved to Greece.
Yeah, he moved. He's a Greek citizen now.
When?
They have relaxed pedophile laws there, so it doesn't make sense to. I think the problem is this whole problem of 2020 is the politicization. As humans, we're not developed to understand information. There's so much information. The best way to live a happy life during 2020 is to pray for the best, prepare for the worst sort of scenario, which we do anytime. Stalin 555. What up? How are we? But who is it? I reckon it's someone we know who's watching this. But it is quite. It's you, isn't it, Michael?
No, it's not me.
Not you.
Stalin.
But what I'm trying to say is that we live in a world with so much information. As humans, we're developed to drink rum and Coke. I think it's someone we know. Stalin 555. I think we are developed to drink rum and coke.
Any questions, Stalin? Any quick questions before we finish
Any
up?
quick questions before we head off? But I'll continue with the politicization, right? We need to calm down. Whatever it will be, will be. We'll understand this. The truth will always come to light. We'll understand why this is happening. How's the weather in Perth these days? You know, don't you? You know, Michael.
No, I swear to God, I don't know who this person is. It's funny though.
Why is it funny?
Because of the comments. How's the the weather in Perth these days? Well, we're not from Perth, Stalin, so we wouldn't know. You can go on the BOM radar website, Bureau of Meteorology, and you'll get all your weather information there.
What we're saying is that the virus can be politicized. There's data saying that it's not deadly. I caught you at the best time when the stream is ending. You did indeed. Is that one side of the radar is people saying it's not deadly. The other side is saying it's deadly. There's no in the middle. No, what the hell is going on? The best way is to stick with your family, stick with what you believe in, pray for the best, prepare for the worst. And if Donald Trump wins in 2020, I'm telling you now, is that there's going to be a civil war no matter, and Donald Trump will be the last president. That's my prediction. That's my feeling, that there's going to be some civil war. And we need to deal with China as well, because I'm sick of China. I'm sick of the Communist Party, not the Chinese people, because they're really nice, they make good food, and they don't understand that the rest of the world will stand by you. You will revolt against the Chinese Communist Party. What you guys are saying is nobody listening to you, mate. That's true. Well, at least we can say it, so it's there, so the artificial intelligence can understand what we're saying. Well, you're watching it, aren't you, Stalin 555?
Yeah, at least one person is.
I've got a message for you, tossers. All right. What's your message?
Next time you got to promote it on the page before we start.
Yeah, I think we're just winging. I think we do need to bring more guests on. It's hard. It's hard to talk about Foster's Australian for beer.
Okay.
Well,
I think
that's the end of it. I think this dude's just a troll. He's a troll.
I think that's enough. I think we'll finish it up there. We'll finish off with Foster's. Foster's Australian for beer.
Thank you.
It's not a good beer, but it is an Australian beer. So we'll finish up with Foster's.
Oh, what the hell? We got two people watching on Twitch.
Pickle Arms.
I'm here too.
Oh, you're on Twitch too. You're on Twitch. Oh, I forgot you're on Twitch.
Yeah.
How many people are watching on Twitch?
Two. Two people are watching on Twitch. Yeah, so we're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, which is kind of interesting. Well, I'll make sure you guys follow us on Twitch if you want. I thought I was watching the In-Betweeners rerun. Surely we know this guy. I feel like we know him. That is. That's a good goal. That's a good.
Well, we're flattered. We're flattered that you think
God damn.
we're as good a show as In-Betweeners. We appreciate that you think we're as good a show as In-Betweeners. In-Betweeners is a really good show. Yeah. What guests do you want to bring on?
Let's try and get a human trafficking guest, I think, and talk about they're a survivor of it.
Survivor.
I don't know. I don't know how we're going to get someone, because it's going to be quite hard. Because because half the time with these podcasts like Joe Rogan, they're like spawn because they've got such a follower base that they can Instagram message anyone they want or direct message them, and they'll almost certainly have you fuckers watch the Irish called Derry Girls. Michael, I swear you know this dude. You know this person.
Why are you looking at me for? How do I know it's not you?
Uncontrollably.
You're laughing too.
It is quite funny. I'm not gonna lie, it is quite funny.
So no response from RV Yemeni, right?
We haven't got a response from him. So I don't know how we're gonna.
What about the
Dave Lee one?
Guy, the Barclay McGain. You know him?
That's right.
Barclay McGain. He he used to be a young Liberal Party member. And he was on that he got sacked from it. He got kicked out of the place because of some leaked messages about some that were racist and stuff. But he was on Friendly because he was on he did this video interviewing schoolies in Gold Coast about politics.
Oh, that dude, yeah. I know who he is.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
I reckon it'll be interesting to have him on, get his perspective on politics.
But we're gonna have to rethink it because I think we can. We've got one follower. Pickle Arms. Thank you for following us. It doesn't come through on Twitch, but it's I think we're the best thing to do with this whole coronavirus situation and getting people on is that people want to understand our messages. I don't know about you wankers, but I'm going to vote for Jacinda Ardern's fourth term. Cheers, Pickle Arms, for that. We're using StreamYard, so it doesn't come through if we're getting followers or not. Just the viewers and the likes on Facebook. But yeah, Michael, I think we need to rethink it. We need to rethink our attack strategy. I think I'm gonna message Dave Lee. I'm gonna message him, and he's the guy about China. And I'll say, look, we want you to come on next. We'll go next Saturday. If you're free on next Saturday, we'll talk to you. We're gonna send you the itinerary. We want to talk about China. I'm going to talk about a multitude of things with him and see what he says on it.
He'd be interesting to have on.
Yeah, he'll be very interesting to have on. How do you guys deal with other opinions that frustrate you? We don't really get. I don't think we really get frustrated by other opinions. Because we're intent people critically think. We try to keep as non-biased as possible, but it's kind of hard not having a perspective on things. But our main goal is to open up critical thinking more, and people can question the narrative, but also understand that sometimes things aren't as they seem. But do research, just critical. But answer your question. We rarely get frustrated. Some opinions are funny. Some opinions are not. It's good that people are talking about how they feel. It's good that people are expressing their opinions because as humans, the best way to innovate is to listen to others and to grow from there. And that's what we think.
Well said. And also we aim to actually have guests on that disagree with us. The whole point of having guests on is to introduce a different perspective. People who we might not necessarily agree with, but would be interesting to listen to.
Look up Sam Sater. All right, we'll look him up.
Oh, I know Sam Cedar. He's
Who's that?
he's not bad.
I'll
He's
search
an
him up.
American. He's an American left-wing political commentator.
Do you
He's
reckon
actually a
he'll
bit of
come
a
on?
comedian as well.
He seems pretty big.
No, he wouldn't come on.
Nah, I reckon. And Kylie
Kyle Kulinski. I love Kyle Kulinski.
Who's
I listen
he?
to him all the time. He's another political, left-wing political commentator. He's
All
he's a big endorser of Bernie.
Yeah,
he's a really intelligent guy.
Right. Oh, so you're a Yank, Stalin 555. What do you think about Trump? What's your opinion on Trump? But you know what? Why don't we? Every shot that's not fired is a miss. Why don't we fire all these shots to like Noam Chomsky? Imagine if he comes on. All that.
You know something. You know, if you email Noam Chomsky, he'll actually reply to you. He replies to all his emails.
Does he?
Yeah.
Holy moly! That would be mad. That would be so mad. If we could get someone like, because he's someone different. Because we tend to get more right leaning people on. We kind of want another like a left leaning person on to make it more believable that we're trying to show people different opinions. Right. I'll send him an email actually. I hate Trump and Biden equally. That's true. Yeah, I reckon we can. If you're,
he does reply to all his emails. I don't know if he'll go on the podcast, but he definitely replies to all his emails. Almost everyone. So.
Almost everyone.
Do you think Trump and Biden are the same, or do you reckon which ones are less evil?
The controlled opposition term that they like to use a lot. Controlled opposition.
I reckon Biden is obviously a little bit better than Trump, because at least he has a plan to give more people healthcare, even if it's not the best plan.
The thing
is a plan. Trump has no healthcare plan. The only thing he's done is kick people off health insurance.
Right, I don't know. Yeah, but then again, with Biden, I don't agree with how he's running. Is because I guarantee you that he's going to drop out and Kamala Harris, whatever her name is going to come in and step in.
He's not going to drop out. Why would he drop out though?
Because he's literally like the oldest. He'll be the oldest president in history, and he looks like he's going to cark it any second. Like he looks like he's going to die.
Yeah, well, the only way he drops out is if he passes away, right? He's not going to drop out intentionally because, you know, he's been doing this. He's pretty much probably wanted this all his life. What is this? This is like the second or third time he's run for president. He's never going to get this chance again. He won't drop out.
46 years, and maybe I'm giving into the Trump propaganda. I don't know. Like maybe.
But you just got to remember, even if Biden is president, I almost said when there, but that's if, because he actually might lose now. If he is president, remember there'll be other people around him doing the work as well, like the vice president.
You know what? This whole year, it makes you go mental, and it's only going to get worse. He's healthy as an ox on that Macca's diet.
Trump
has caused way too much civil unrest, not only here but worldwide. I feel like the media has a part to play with that though, because they literally shut on him day one and they wouldn't stop.
Yeah, but it's also Trump's rhetoric. Like he doesn't even pretend to care about unity. You know, he intentionally tries to demonize one group to try and so he can throw red meat at the other to try and embolden that other group. Like for example, what are you talking about the Insurrection Act and sending in the military? That just escalates problems. That makes people angrier. Or gassing people so you can do a photo op in front of a church with a Bible. That type of behavior.
But then again, a lot of this stuff comes out to be factually false because the media
false?
I don't know.
Those two particular things are true, though. Those two particular things are true. Yeah. Mike Pence is the bigger problem.
Of course, the mainstream media has caused more harm worldwide than anyone. I think so. And that's why we've set up Malice Politico to hopefully one day, because we've got 1,000-something likes on Facebook, but YouTube needs a bit of work. We wanted to make it independent.
The YouTube algorithm purposely favors mainstream media as well, authoritative sources.
But it sucks though, because there's no alternative to it. They've got a massive monopoly on it. And any other services that you want to use are too small to even bother. And I want to do this for a full-time living, but
you want to do it for full-time?
Yeah, I want to. It's Mathers Politico on YouTube. We've got and search us up on Facebook as well, and we've got a website, matherspolitico.com.
Small but growing.
Small but growing. You just got to be positive about it, because things do happen for a reason, and we're on this journey for a reason, and people are watching this stuff for a reason. It's always good to challenge the mainstream. I'm just messaging the missus.
All right. I reckon we should call it a wrap.
We'll call it a wrap. We'll see what Stalin comes back with if you've found our channel. But remember, check out matherspolitico.com. Check out our YouTube. Check out our Facebook. We've got more videos. We do on the street interviewing, but at the moment, because we're in Melbourne, we can't really do it. Lockdown. I went to Chelsea the other day, Michael, though, and like tons of people were out. I was thinking, why not?
I've seen people out. Yeah.
I don't know. The algorithm favors paid propagandas like Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Prager, all of the Coach Brother funded channels. That is true. We don't really know who to believe, really, do we? Because they're both. Oh wait, Casey's calling me. Hold on. We'll end it there.
All right.
Love everyone.